Hello, and welcome to my podcast. Today we will cover the importance of human rights of inmates as well as human right violations of inmates around the world. My name is Lindsay Deming, and I'm currently a senior at the Commonwealth University of Pennsylvania in Mansfield with a major in criminal justice. Human rights are the basic rights that everyone is entitled to. These rights include the safety, dignity, health care, and fair treatment to everyone. While the concept of human rights have been around a very long time, the United Nations officially adopted human rights on December 10, 1948, in the response to World War II and the Holocaust. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights was created. Those responsible for maintaining and ensuring human rights are national governments, international and regional organizations, civil society, and non-state actors. A few of the reasons as to why inmate rights are important are that prisoners are still human beings. They are intended to prevent abuse and inhumane treatment. They support rehabilitation, not just punishment. They protect physical and psychological health while lowering recidivism rates. Common violations of human rights within prisons are overcrowding of population, poor medical care, violence and/or abuse, and the misuse of solitary confinement. More than 60% of the countries around the world operate at the level of overcapacity. Poor medical care includes lack of preventative services, addiction treatments, harm reduction, as well as mental health care. Specific medical treatments that are difficult or non-existent to some inmates would be HIV and other STD treatments, as well as protocol for emergency treatment as needed. There's a large amount of violence that occurs within the prisons, and studies have documented the long-term psychological effect of misusing solitary confinement. Why is this a global issue? The United Nations consider inmate rights a human rights priority specifically because incarcerated individuals remain human beings that are entitled to dignity, safety, and fundamental rights regardless of their legal status. The focus is to prevent torture, protection against inhumane living conditions, and promote rehabilitation. The United Nations argues that proper treatment is essential for public safety and the prevention of further crimes. Next, we will look at a few case studies from different countries to show human rights violations. Studies conducted on the prisons within the United States have documented severe overcrowding, prolonged isolation, excessive use of force, and the 13th Amendment violations. Overcrowding in prison promotes the spread of infectious diseases and lowers the cleanliness of the facility. Psychological effects of prolonged isolation include mental health deterioration, sensory deprivation, and hallucinations, increase in self-harm and suicide, and the loss of social skills. As of February 2026, Rikers Island remains under intense legal and federal scrutiny due to the continuous reports of excessive use of force. Reports from the Nunes Independent Monitor have documented a pattern and practice of staff on inmate violence. These reports document prohibited use of force techniques being used, retaliation, as well as inadequate investigations. Texas is one of the 7 states in the United States where almost all the prison labor is free. Inmates are mandated to work up to 14 hours a day with no wages. United Nations reports published through 2026 indicate systematic torture is a widespread and coordinated state policy in Russian-controlled facilities. Ukrainian prisoners of war and civilians are held in over 140 detention centers across occupied Ukraine and Russia. Torture methods include severe beatings with rubber batons and plastic pipes, administration of electrical shocks, mock executions, and being forced into prolonged stress positions. There is extreme overcrowding with starvation while lacking hygiene and medical care. A December 2025 OHCHR report found that out of the 187 recently released Ukrainian prisoners of war, 185 reported torture, with a majority of citing sexual abuse. Methods of sexual abuse include electrical shock to the genitals, rape and attempted rape, mutilation and forced nudity as a form of humiliation in front of guards. Other reports include that females were injected with a chemical that forced sterilization, as well as targeting men to break them of their dignity. As of May of 2025, the Ukrainian government and human rights group reported that over 200 Ukrainian prisoners of war had died in the custody of the Russian government. Autopsies reveal that causes of these deaths include systemic torture, medical neglect, and starvation. About 70% of state-run prisons in Mexico experience some form of self-governance. Gangs, cartels, or inmate leaders control the daily operations, security, and extortions within the prisons. This allows for criminal organizations to operate from within. There are high rates of torture, sexual violence, and extortion within the walls of prisons in Mexico. Recent reports from 2024 and 2025 document that half of all the incarcerated individuals reported physical abuse by authorities. Some prisons in Mexico have reported running at 242% capacity, and 37% of the prison's population have not been convicted of a crime, and some reporting that they have been incarcerated for 15 years without a trial. In many facilities, drinking water is not provided to the inmates. They are required to rely on family and friends outside of the prison to purchase water. There is a widespread of infectious diseases, an example being tuberculosis. It is also reported that inmates are required to pay monthly rent in order to survive while incarcerated. Why society should care. It is important to remember that not all inmates are those we hear about on the evening news. There are many prisoners of war who are inmates and those who have not been criminally charged with a crime. The reasons why human rights of inmates is important and should be addressed is because most inmates return to society. Psychological effects of living in an environment where the individual has to continuously fight for survival decreases the likelihood of being reformed. The Nelson Mandela laws created 122 laws that were adopted by the United Nations of how inmates should be treated. The way individuals are treated within countries reflects national values. Improved prison care promotes a safer society for those returning to society. What can be done? Things that should be focused on should include reducing overcrowding, improving health care and living conditions, increasing the access to a fair trial and adequate defense, implementing programs that promote rehabilitation of the offenders, as well as using alternatives to imprisonment when it is appropriate to do so. It is also important to be informed about the things that are occurring in prisons around the world, as well as holding leaders accountable for human rights that are being violated. Thank you for listening to my podcast and the importance of human rights of inmates.